Hi friends, this is Laura with Potpourri of Life. I hope that you had a great day. It's Monday evening and we got a lot of snow. It is so gorgeous out there, but it's heavy. And before my husband went to work, he had shoveled, I believe it was about 8 to 10 inches. And then I was out there, I checked in on the chickens and realized I needed to go shovel. But and the lilac tree branches were coming down and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to get ruined. And then my neighbor came out and cleaned out just the part after the plow trucks had come by, just to kind of make it so David could get into the yard. And then a little bit later I went out and I think I shoveled maybe about 4 to 5 inches, but car length down the side of the driveway so David would have a place to park. And it was really sweet because two young lads who were walking down the street with shovels, and they looked over, do you want some help? And I mean, they were genuine. And I'm like, no, I got this. I'm good. My back was screaming, but I was good. And I said, no, I'm all set, but thank you for asking. I really appreciate it. And of course, they were down the street by the time I realized that was a mistake to say no. But my pride, no, I can do this. And then a little bit later, my neighbor came back and he cleaned up the whole front in front of my car and forward. So David has plenty of room to get in when he gets home. So I'm really grateful we have good people in our neighborhood and we still have things to clean up. I did clean up some of the lilac trees after I came back in from the chicken run and getting the chickens in for the night. And as I'm shaking them and I tried to get out of the way, I came in covered with snow all over. But you know what? It was a good experience because this is nature and this is what happens in New England and it is so beautiful. I'll try to share some pictures at the end here. But David and I, when he gets home, we have to go out because we have those plastic roofs that is great for keeping animals from getting into the chickens because we have owls and we have other animals that'll come in and just snatch them away, and we're trying to protect them. Plus we wanted it so that their run would be dry. So there's like about a foot or more of snow, and I tried moving some, but it's pretty solid. So we're going to go out like a team later to take care of that. One of the things that I wanted to share with you tonight, it's been something that's been on my mind for a few days. It's a story that I have read before, I've listened to before, and so tonight I want to read this story and then share a few of my thoughts. And yes, it's Christian based, and yet I'm hoping that if you are not a Christian, you would just listen to the story and listen to my thoughts on my reflection of it. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read it. A pastor transformed himself into a homeless person and went to the church that he was to be introduced as the head pastor that morning. He walked around his soon-to-be church for about 30 minutes while it was filling with people for service. Only 3 people said hello to him. Only 3. Most looked the other way. He asked people for change because he was hungry. Not one gave him anything. He went into the sanctuary to sit down in the front of the church and was told by the ushers that he would need to get up and go and sit in the back pew. He said hello to people as they walked in, but was greeted with cold stares and dirty looks from people looking down at him and judging him. He sat in the back of the church and listened to the church announcements for the week. He listened as new visitors were welcomed into the church that morning, but no one acknowledged that he was new. He watched people all around him continue to look his way with stares that said, "You are not welcome here." I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but it's a horrible feeling. Then the elders of the church went to the podium to make the announcement. They said they were excited to introduce the new pastor of the church to the congregation. "We would like to introduce you to our new pastor." The congregation stood up and looked around, clapping with joy with anticipation. The homeless man, sitting in the back, stood up and started walking down the aisle. That's when all the clapping stopped and the church went silent. With all eyes on him, he walked up to the altar and reached for the microphone. He stood there for a moment and then recited so eloquently a verse from the Bible. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes to clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of my brothers and sisters, you did for me." After he recited this, he introduced himself as their new pastor and told the congregation what he had experienced that morning. Many began to cry and bow their heads in shame. "Today I see a gathering of people here, but I do not see a church of Jesus." The world has enough people that look the other way. What the world needs is disciples of Jesus that can follow his teachings and live as he did. When will you decide to become a disciple? He then dismissed service until the following Sunday, as his sermon had been given. I don't know if you've ever experienced rejection. I have. I don't know if you've ever been a part or a member of a church family and ever felt rejection. I have. And before I go on, I realize a lot of people say, well, the church isn't made of perfect people. That's why we have church. And it's kind of cold. Even if they said it in a nice way, it's really not what Jesus wants us to recite to one another. Now, I will be perfectly honest with you. I am not perfect. Nope. I make mistakes. And sometimes I have thoughts that run through my mind that I have to kind of like, ugh. Or if I'm talking with my husband, he'll say Laura, and vice versa. I'll say David. And that's what partnership is. And that's what Christianity is keeping each other accountable when our thought process just begins to go in the wrong direction. Because we're human, we're not perfect. And that's why the church was designed for imperfect people. But to use that as a reason to be upset why people leave is not a good reason. We left a few churches, and you know, we've gone to meetings to a few of them. We met with the elders, we explained our concerns, and we weren't supported at all. And one of them was against me because I spoke up about something, and it was just whatever. So I got up, and one of the things an individual said to me, "Well, it's not my responsibility for how you feel." So I got up, and because they had come to our house too, and I got up and I said, "I'm leaving." He goes, "You did that the other day we were at your house. You got up and you went to the bedroom and then you never came out." I said, "I told you then what I'm going to tell you now. If I spoke then, or if I speak now, the words that'll come out will not be pleasing to God. So it is best for me to walk out now." And so I left. And then David came, and I have never seen him stand up for me in this manner. He said, "The way you treated my wife compared to the other person in leadership, you made a mistake because you need to treat both people equally." And I won't go into details as to what happened, but I was trying to keep a youth group leader accountable for how she treated my daughter. I'm a mom. One thing I'm going to do is defend my kids when they come to me. And all I was trying to do was to talk to her about, this is how you made her feel. This is what she said. We can sit down. She didn't want it. And anytime I tried arranging, it just didn't work out. So things happened. And so we ended up leaving the church. Nobody reached out to us after. That's what happens when people leave the church. Nobody reaches out to find out why. Would I have told them the details? Probably not. I might say a few things, but I probably wouldn't say all the details, because you know what? It was between myself and this other person. Although David was involved because he's married to me, the elders were involved as well because they're part of the leadership. And what we do in a church environment is we come together to resolve things. It's called conflict resolution, and it is very biblical to resolve things and communicate and say, okay, how can we address it? And honestly, the meeting was going okay. It wasn't that they were favoring me. It was the fact that it was making sense. They were actually hearing me. And then all of a sudden it twisted. Folks, I want you to realize that not all leaders are perfect. They're human. Not all Christians are perfect. We're all human. And then the final straw that kept me out of the church for a number of years now, my faith is stronger than you can imagine. I will never deny Christ. I will try every day to be his servant. I won't serve others for how they perceive I should serve. I serve how God leads me to serve. But I also believe I am to serve with how I treat others. And sometimes I fail. But for the most part, I try really hard to make life easier for others. But then again, I'm not out very often. That's not an excuse. Because, sometimes my husband and I might not agree on stuff. Trust me, I'm not being very Christian-like sometimes when we disagree. Yet what we do is we come back together. We kind of like step back, say, time out, and we come back and we talk about it. That's what Christians do. We work it out. Then the last church, though, that I was starting to talk about had to do with my youngest daughter. And I was really, really sick when I went to this church, and I just couldn't go to church. And so I stayed home. David stayed home with me. And so she went by herself. She came home crying. I said, what the heck happened? And so she told me. The pastor preached about people based on how they dressed, what they wore, and how they behaved. I said, excuse me? Like, he said that? And so she says, I just don't want to go back. I said, do you want to go to any other church? She goes, nope. I said, okay. So I called him the following day. He was in office. And I said to him, I said, I need to talk to you about a situation that happened Sunday morning with my youngest. And he goes, well, what's that? I said, I need to understand your message. I need to understand what you were saying. And he goes, I don't understand what you're talking about. And he goes, and you weren't even there. I said, no, but my daughter was. And you were talking about how people dressed in black or did this or did that. You were describing her. You were describing friends of hers. Now, folks, I need to clarify. One of the things I believed in is that I was raising my daughters. You dress modestly. You are clean. You take care of yourself. But she wanted to wear black. I didn't allow her to wear black makeup. I didn't allow her to wear jeans that had holes in them. I was strict on being modest. And so she wanted to wear black. I said, I don't care if you wear black. I said, black does not represent the person you are. I said, I just want you to dress neat and clean. And her outfits were always neat and clean. She could get away with all kinds of styles. At home, I didn't care what she did because I knew her. See, that's the problem in this world. We judge people on how they look. We judge people on what they say, or if they feel a different way about stuff. So I talked to him and I said, you judged my daughter. and you told the congregation not to trust people who dress like she does. He goes, well, that's not what I meant. I said, you have a teenage person, you have a bunch of teenage people in your congregation, and you're saying that's not what you meant? He was trying to get across that we need to be careful of these people. And I said, you know something? One of the worst things we do in this world is judge people based on how they dressed. And I said, there are a lot of hurting teens out there. A lot. And my daughter knew a lot of them. Not all of them wear black. And I know a number of them. They are fabulous people. And I told them, I said, you know what you did to my daughter? You turned her away from Christ. You turned her away from the church. He says, that wasn't my intent. I said, it may not have been your intent, but that's what happened. Now, I love my kids. I really don't care what they wear. I don't care how they cut their hair. Not that I necessarily like some things they do, but you know what? That's who they are. That's their personality. That's their choice. I did my job as a parent to raise our girls until they were 18, and then they went off to college, and we were still there for them, and we've been there for them all along, but they've reached an age where they're kind of like living life the way they want to, and that's fine with me. But I can't judge them based on their decisions right now. I know the people that they are. You know, I've been judged for things before myself. And it's really hurtful. I was judged by my family. And I don't know if it was supposed to be an insult or not, but my brothers would talk about me as the Jesus freak. And I'm like, a Jesus freak? Okay, I'm a strong believer. That's true. I love Jesus. I really do. I read my Bible. But I don't walk down the street reading my Bible and yelling out scriptures and stuff like that. That's what I would think they would see as a Jesus freak. But you know what? If that's the worst that somebody can call me, praise be to God. You know, because I am not ashamed of who Jesus is or the gospel. I'm also not ashamed that I no longer go to church. I want to go to church. I truly do. And I miss going to church, but I don't miss sitting aside from people and people not, you know, wanting to include us for whatever reason. I don't know. I never will understand. It was like we didn't fit in. And, you know, and I'll take full responsibility for myself. My husband's a very shy person, so he's not a very sociable person. That shouldn't be a problem because there's a lot of men who are not sociable. They'll talk if you come up to them. And then you have me who, if I see something, I'm not shy to say what I saw. One of the things that I have noticed in our world, and as they said here, the world has enough people that look the other way. What the world needs is disciples of Jesus that can follow his teachings. Jesus stood up to the money changers in the church. He said it was wrong. And yes, he got angry. I'm not giving myself permission to be angry or anything like that. What I'm saying is, I do believe that when we see something wrong as Christians, we need to stand up and say, stop. But even as Christians, when we see somebody hurting another person that we don't even know whether they're a Christian or not, we still are responsible to show love and kindness. And over the past 3 years, I know I cry about this. It kind of chokes me up every single time. People have changed. It's not cool. If you say you're a child of God, then be a child of God. Because do you know what he's talking about them? He's saying here, the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance. Do you know what he's talking about? because of all the good that the people did for the strangers, the men and women, the boys and girls, all those that they treated with kindness and love. Your inheritance is in Jesus Christ, your home in heaven. That's your inheritance. It's not riches. It's not material possessions. God does bless people with those things, but that doesn't mean he blesses every single Christian that loves him, adores him. I mean, look at Job. He took everything from him, but Job still loved him. Someday I'll share my testimony of how my strength became stronger despite the obstacles that I faced as a young girl. But today I think that's the part of me, because I had to fight my way out. I had to fight, trusting that God was going to lead me. And so now when I see people treat one another the way that they did, even with the onset of the world pandemic, I just couldn't believe what I saw. People who loved God changed. Jesus didn't change. God didn't change. People, his children, changed. People claimed to be Christians in our leadership. And then we, just because you go to a church doesn't give you a shield of protection. God sees past the thickest shield you can possibly have in front of you. God knows your heart. If your heart is cold, if it's made of steel, God knows. I don't know how God sees me. I really don't. I'm not perfect. And sometimes I wonder what I could do more to better myself for him, not for you, not for my husband. I mean, I love being a wife to my husband. He drives me nuts. But you know what's really cool about a marriage? Is you get to practice love when you don't feel like loving another person. Because sometimes we can irritate each other, and in our hearts are still loving that person, but we can hurt each other really bad. And oftentimes the times we hurt another person is usually the ones we love the most. And then you experience what true love is. It's when you're forgiven. So often, well, not often here, but we have experienced many things where we kind of irritate each other. It's like, why'd you do that? Why'd you say that? And feelings can get hurt. My feelings get hurt most. But then again, there's things that I say that can be hurtful to him, and then I'll talk about it. So that's why I'm saying I am not perfect. I just don't understand why we became divided as a nation. If we're all Christians, at least that relationship should remain strong, and we shouldn't be holding judgment. We shouldn't be banging down doors of, clinics and stuff like that. And regardless of how I feel, we're supposed to love one another. Instead, we label each other. We label other Christian sisters and brothers too. That's horrible. That's horrible. So what I wanted to share was important to me. This story means a lot to me, and like I said, I've read it a number of times, and it has a lot of meaning. God speaks to us through stories people share, through the scriptures that are shared. He speaks to everybody, not just Christians. Because you see, if a homeless person came to our church and needed food, and I know in this world there's a lot of untrustworthy people, lots of them. But the thing we have to trust most is who God is. And no, that does not mean Christians need to be a doormat. And I'm going to put it right out there for you. As Christians, we are not meant to be a doormat to do what other people say we need to do, or to be however people perceive us to be. But we do have an obligation to treat others the way Jesus would treat you if you were the stranger. The reason Jesus walked this earth was to set an example, to teach us, and to show one another how to love. We got a whole book, the New Testament, tons of little books there to teach us. The Gospels, those are really valuable to us. And so I would hope that as we look back and we see people leave the church family, don't just sit back and say, oh, she was disgruntled, or he didn't like this, or they got divorced so they had to separate. You know what? That's where the gossip train comes in. Watch my video on gossip. We're not meant to gossip. And so for non-Christians who might be listening to this, I want you to realize that not all Christians are judging you. Actually, some of us want to get to know you. You know, if you choose to follow Jesus Christ, that is your choice. My choice is to love unconditionally. Now, I can't give you everything under the sun. First of all, I don't have that kind of money, but I can give love. I can be kind. My neighbor coming over here to help with the shoveling, that's love. That's somebody who cares for somebody. That's neighborly. And we have neighbors that won't do a thing. We have a couple neighbors that are really great neighbors. But we have a few that are just like, wow. So it's kind of interesting. If you hear the clicking, it's because I'm clicking this, and I'm sorry, sometimes my anxiety maybe, or my nervousness, and I'm really not nervous about this because I'm actually really kind of excited to be sharing what I'm sharing tonight. And I could share all kinds of examples. But if you watch, like, even the story of the Waltons, you know, if you've ever seen that series, they were a Christian family. And things happen to them all the time. But we need to come together as a community of believers, not against each other. More importantly, when a homeless person comes into your church body, embrace them. It's really scary right now because we don't know if somebody's going to come into our church and hurt the believers there. And yet, God's not going to harm the believer. And if it's your time to go, he will take you home and you won't feel a thing. But that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is, it doesn't hurt to be kind. If you're in a parking lot at the grocery store and you see somebody struggling, it doesn't hurt to help them with that carriage or to help them get something from another shelf. I do it all the time. It does hurt. But you know what it does more? It fills my heart that I could do something for somebody that I did not even know. And that's what Jesus' job was. He came as a servant of God, as his son, to teach us how to love one another. So whether you go to church or not, love those cashiers, the baggers, those at when you go and you pick up your grocery items, whatever you're doing. If you're at the lumber mill, if you're at the big box stores, wherever you're going, just be kind. I can't say this any more than I have over the past 3 years. Now, have people settled down? Yeah, people have settled down quite a bit. And there's things coming out that it's not for this topic here. But I would like to believe that those we have disagreed with, we can kind of forgive one another and come together and accept each other. You know, we all have different values. We all have different faiths. And just because I feel we should treat everybody the same doesn't mean everybody will agree with me. Sometimes in Bible study, I used to see the scriptures. I would read them very differently than others. So when I shared what my viewpoint was, it wasn't received well because it wasn't the direction in which the teacher wanted it to go. And that's okay. They fixed it. They told me why I was wrong. And I'm okay with it, whatever. But I got to actually see their point of view. So I didn't have a problem with that. But, yeah, I didn't argue, but I would say, I appreciate you sharing that because I didn't look at it from that perspective. But this is the perspective I came from. You see, the Bible was written for all of us for the years to come. And depending on where we are in life, those scripture verses are going to teach us something. It's going to teach each of us something different. But more importantly, I hope the scriptures are teaching us how to have a full life with Christ. And so I could go on and on and on about this because I can. And maybe I am a Jesus freak. Actually, I'm a God-believing, Bible-believing Christian who will not back down from anybody who wants to insult me as a Christian. So I'm going to hang on strong. And if you want to call me a Jesus freak like my siblings did, by all means, go for it. Because they may have hurt my feelings for how they treated me. They made me stronger. Because God does that. He puts in front of us obstacles. And if we can climb over that obstacle, that empowers us. And that's what we have to be. We have to be empowered. We have to be giving and loving for Christ. Have a great evening, and I hope the snowfall isn't too bad in your areas, but it's pretty heavy here. And over at my father-in-law's house, tree limbs are down, so we're going to have to do some cleaning up. And I'll show some pictures of my backyard, and maybe I might show some of that. I might not show the tree limbs down over there, but anyways, I hope you have a wonderful evening. I hope you reflect on this beautiful snow if you're getting it, or whatever weather you have. And I hope you realize how blessed you are. This is manna from heaven. And the snow is excellent for our compost, for our grounds and our gardens and stuff. Manna from heaven. Isn't that cool? Folks, have a great night and may God bless you.